Zoom and live streaming on YouTube. And we will continue with this practice during the COVID-19 pandemic until we can safely resume our in-person meetings. Although this meeting is taking place virtually, I want to acknowledge the land we are on as a traditional territory of First Nations peoples. In particular, we recognize and thank the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples for their stewardship of these lands over the millennia. We also recognize the contribution of the Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous people, both in shaping and strengthening the region in particular, and our province and country as a whole. I'm going to go through a roll call. Just let us know that you're here. Member D'Angela?
Here.
Member Eek?
Here.
Member Gale?
Here.
Member Gibson?
Present.
Member Lawson?
Here.
Member McKendrick?
Present.
Great, thank you. Just to let everybody know that's watching, along with our own staff, we have Dwayne Sprague from the Ministry of the Solicitor General with us here again today. Welcome again, Dwayne. Any declarations of conflict of interest today? Okay, seeing none. Adoption of the minutes. I have the minutes of the board meeting held March 25th, 2021. I'll have that moved by members D'Angela and Eek. Any questions with regards to that? Anyone opposed to those minutes? Those minutes are carried. Reports from the board chair. So on April the 20th, board members virtually attended the regional chair's State of the Region address. Regional Chair Jim Bradley delivered his keynote address to the Niagara business community, and this was followed by an expert panel discussion on the issues Niagara faced both in 2020 and our opportunities that are coming to us in 2021 and beyond. On April 27th, Vice Chair Eek will be attending the virtual Joint Region and Police Facilities Accommodations Steering Committee meeting. The committee will continue to meet monthly to monitor any issues that may arise with our police facilities. David, any updates with regards to anything at this time?
No, none that I've heard. I trust all is going well. No news is good news, I think, in this case, and perhaps the chief might have a comment or two that maybe we have something further to discuss, but all is well from my perspective.
Okay, perfect. The Canadian Association of Police Governance is hosting their 2021 Virtual Governance Summit, and that's going to be on April the 27th and June 30th. Is that correct, Deb? That's what you have here. That is correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. The summit on April the 27th is entitled Governance 101, a refresher for police boards and commissions. It will explore the essentials of police governance, including core police governance concepts and best practices regarding accountability, community and government engagement, evaluations, communication, orientation procedures, and individual roles and responsibilities. The June 30th summit will focus on policy development in police governance. Board members have been pre-registered to participate in both summits, and connection details will be provided closer to those event dates. The Canadian Association of Police Governance monthly webinar sessions, they will be hosted on April the 29th at noon, and the topic of the session is body-worn cameras and the policy considerations for police governance. Connection details, again, will be provided to board members as we move closer to that date, which is coming upon us very quickly. Our upcoming meetings, the next committee meeting will be held Thursday, May the 6th at 9 a.m. And the next board meeting will be held Thursday, May the 12th at 9 a.m. These meetings will be held by electronic participation through Zoom. Any questions to the report? Seeing none. Reports from the chief. Chief McCullough.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Just an announcement with regards to our annual awards ceremony. As board members are aware, the service was planning on holding the annual awards ceremony virtually on Tuesday, May the 11th at our headquarters facility in Niagara Falls. The award ceremony was to be held in such a manner that obviously would have been compliant with all of the COVID-19 restrictions. Unfortunately, due to the surge in COVID-19 cases that we're seeing here in Niagara and across the province, as well as the increased public health restrictions associated with the stay-at-home order, we have decided to postpone this event until we have a better picture of what the future holds during these really unprecedented times. When a new date is established, we'll share that with the board. Just with regards to our ongoing homicide and attempt homicide statistics, during the reporting period of between March 24th and April 20th, we had 1 homicide and no attempt homicide during that time frame. Year to date, we've had 3 homicides and 3 attempt homicides. 3 homicides and 0 attempt homicides. Comparatively, we had 5 homicides in 2020, 7 homicides in 2019, 2 homicides in 2018, and 3 in 2017. Some information on that homicide that occurred during this reporting period. On Monday, April 12th at approximately 8:30 p.m., 1 district uniform officers responded to the area of Glenridge Avenue and Marsdale Drive in St. Catharines regarding a person who was on the ground. Upon arrival, officers located a 32-year-old male with gunshot wounds. Male was subsequently transported to hospital where he was later pronounced deceased. Investigators involved in this incident are appealing to anyone who may reside or have a business in the area of the crime scene that may have security cameras, doorbell cameras, or dashboard cameras to contact police. They may have captured something that could assist our investigators in solving this crime. I just want to reiterate the messaging that's gone out previously, but our detectives in this case do not have reason to believe that that there is an ongoing threat to public safety in this incident. The homicide unit has taken carriage of this matter, and the investigation is ongoing. Just with regards to our traffic fatality and serious motor vehicle collisions, during the month of March, we had 1 life-threatening injury and no fatal motor vehicle collisions. Year to date, in terms of how we're trending, during the first quarter of 2021, we've had 2 fatal collisions. For all of 2020, we had 16, 13 in 2019 and 2018, and 16 fatalities in both 2017 and 2016. So we are trending very favorably in that regard. Some information with regards to the serious motor vehicle collision that occurred during this time period. On Monday, March the 22nd, officers responded to a report of an e-bike collision that occurred on Arthur Street at Duke Avenue in Niagara Falls. Investigation determined that a 38-year-old male lost control of his e-bike, falling and striking his head. After declining medical treatment, the male returned to his residence where he was eventually found unconscious. Male was taken to hospital and his injuries were determined to be life-threatening. Collision reconstruction unit commenced an investigation into the matter. However, since the male's condition has improved and his injuries are now deemed non-life-threatening, male continues to recover, and the investigation continues by our reconstruction unit. Some items in the news. Excuse me. During the month of March 2021, detectives from 2 District Street Crime investigated the sale of illegal drugs from a unit at a motel in the city of Niagara Falls. As a result of the investigation, 2 suspects were arrested on March 24th. During the arrest, police located a loaded semi-automatic firearm on one of the suspects. Subsequently, detectives executed a search warrant in a room at the motel, seized green fentanyl, crystal methamphetamine, and cocaine. In total, the street value of the drugs seized was estimated to be approximately $3,800. a 57-year-old Niagara Falls male and a 30-year-old male from Bolton were arrested and charged with various drug-related offenses, along with possession of a prohibited firearm with ammunition. The matter is currently before the courts. Really, really great work by all involved in getting these deadly drugs and the firearm off the streets of Niagara Falls. On April 14th at approximately 11:45 p.m., uniform officers responded to a report of a shooting incident at Ridge Road North and Hibbert Street in Fort Erie. Officers located a 23-year-old male who was suffering from serious gunshot wounds. He was treated by Niagara Emergency Medical Services and then transported to an out-of-region hospital in critical condition. On April 15th, as a result of continued investigation, detectives, along with members of our emergency task unit, arrested 2 individuals in relation to the shooting. A 19-year-old male and a 16-year-old female, both of Fort Erie, were arrested and were each charged with aggravated assault and assault. Both were held in custody pending a bail hearing. And then on April 20th, detectives arrested a 19-year-old Fort Erie resident who was charged with multiple offenses, including aggravated assault, pointing a firearm, discharging a firearm, unauthorized possession of a firearm, careless use of a firearm, possession of a firearm contrary to prohibition order, failing to comply with a release order, and failing to comply with a probation order, and robbery. The matter is, again, believed to be a targeted incident. Really outstanding work by all involved in bringing this matter to a very quick resolution for the community. I'm going to give some updates with regards to the large gatherings that were held, or demonstrations held in St. Catharines and Niagara Falls. The first update relates to the one in St. Catharines. The service continues to provide public safety services to the communities that we serve, and of course supports the efforts of federal, provincial, and local health authorities during the current situation involving COVID-19. We appreciate the public's support of these measures as well. On Saturday, April 10th, a gathering was organized and held in the city of St. Catharines in response to recently implemented government restrictions put in place to slow the spread of COVID-19. Uniform officers were in attendance to ensure public safety and to keep the peace. Since that time, detectives have been continuing to investigate the gathering to determine appropriate charges. In the duration of a gathering, officers use discretion to best manage the situation, to not cause it to escalate, and to preserve the peace. The leading principle is keeping the peace and public safety, and in doing so, at times, officers must utilize discretion when it comes to immediate enforcement. As per the Reopening Ontario Act, hosting or organizing a public event or other gathering where the number of people in attendance exceeds the permitted number may lead to higher penalties. The investigation by detectives focused on such individuals, resulting in charges against a 50-year-old West Lincoln male, a 47-year-old St. Catharines male, a 30-year-old Lincoln male, and a 43-year-old St. Catharines female were all charged under the Reopening Ontario Act. These charges are in addition to those that were laid by the regional bylaw officials at the Niagara region. As the individuals have been charged under the ROA, which is provincial legislation and not the criminal code, our policy at the Niagara Regional Police Service is that we do not disclose the names of those individuals. In relation to the Niagara Falls gathering on Saturday, April 17th, 2021, a gathering was organized and held in Niagara Falls in response to recently implemented government restrictions to slow the spread of COVID-19. Uniform officers were in attendance to ensure public safety and to keep the peace. Since that time, detectives have been continuing to investigate the gathering to determine appropriate charges. As previously mentioned in St. Catharines gathering media release, officers used discretion to manage the situation to not cause it to escalate and to preserve the peace. Subsequent investigation has led to criminal charges. 43-year-old Alicia Herder of St. Catharines and 30-year-old Cullen McDonald of Lincoln both face the following charge: common nuisance, endangering the lives or safety of public, contrary to section 180 sub 1 sub a of the criminal code. Both were released on a Form 10 undertaking with a number of conditions, with a future court date of June 28, 2021. Further charges are pending, in addition to those that, again, were charged by regional bylaw officials to attendees at the event. The service will continue to work proactively and collaboratively with our municipal partners and by law enforcement officers with a goal to gain and obtain voluntary compliance with the emergency orders. Our officers will continue to engage the public to explain the role that we play in staying safe during the pandemic while encouraging compliance, and where appropriate, initiate enforcement through the issuance of offense notices or criminal charges. And this is the 4 E's approach that we often talk about in terms of our approach to enforcement. With rising case counts and the critical strain being placed on the healthcare system throughout Ontario and here locally in Niagara, the service is urging the public to comply with all public health measures and restrictions to limit the continued community transmission of the COVID-19 virus. We, along with our partners at Niagara Health and Niagara Region Public Health, appreciate the public support of all these measures. Those are my comments, Mr. Chair. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief McCullough. Questions to the chief with regards to his report? Okay, seeing none. Again, Chief, as I said in my email over the weekend, thank you for you and your senior staff and all of our officers and staff for their professionalism during the two protests that we had. So we really appreciate that as a board. So thank you.
That's been passed along to all of our members, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Presentations today, we have one. It's item 6.1. It's the Niagara Regional Police Service Crime Reports Mapping Tool. The Corporate Communications Unit will provide a demonstration on the NRPS Crime Report Mapping Tool available on the NRPS website, which provides valuable information about recent crime activity so the public can be more vigilant and implement crime awareness and prevention efforts in their homes, workplaces, and community. So I'll turn this over to our staff. Who's taking the lead on this, Chief?
Sorry, that the presentation is going to be done by Ms. Stephanie Sabrin of our Corporate Communications Unit.
Okay, great. Stephanie, thank you. Welcome.
I'll start sharing my screen now and then walk you through the process. Can you see? Perfect. So the crime mapping tool and the crime reports, as we mentioned, really does visualize crime statistics and places color-coded pins on a map in a geographical area, and it represents occurrences and crimes by type. So when you go to the main page of our website, which is niagarapolice.ca, you go to the search area and look up crime reports. Before you proceed to the actual crime reporting map, there is a disclaimer that is quite lengthy and kind of details all the caveats and the notes for people to be aware of, basically outlining what is being displayed, what is not being displayed, and the reasons why. Click through and agree. So there's various areas and agencies. It sorts by incidents and by agencies as well. And it's pulled from the computer-aided dispatch system, which is the CAD system with a descriptive narrative and ensuring that we're not displaying any identifying information. So if you go to the search area, we use 5700 Valley Way, which is our address. And the map will zoom you in. Takes a moment for it to populate. There we go. So as we go through the filters, it shows several different areas. You can browse by type, time, general location, the block or the cross street, or the name of the agency that published the information. And the location is represented as a reasonable approximation of the location, simply to address privacy concerns, and then also ensuring that we're not identifying witnesses or victims. As you go through the various filters, you can look through the past week, the past month, or a custom date range as well. If we're looking through all days of the week, and the information is cached for a year-long period that you can search back for. So we have violent assaults, assault with a deadly weapon, sexual offenses, a number of different MVCs, indecent acts, theft of a vehicle, or trespassing as well. If we wanted to search through here, a custom date range, be able to go from April 14th, confirm, to now. If we were to perhaps look for a violent assault, we would uncheck everything else. See results. So we then pulls up this particular incident, which shows an assault that occurred on the 14th at 5 p.m. in the area of Ellis Street, Simcoe Street. Gives some minor top level information for that. Any questions in regards to the crime mapping tool?
I have a question.
Oh,
I was waving my hand.
Go ahead, Bob. Yeah,
Thanks.
sorry, it's just that you're now in a, I can't see everybody at the same time, so I got to scroll.
Okay. Stephanie, okay, your first page that came out, I was intrigued. I tried to read it quickly, and when you go onto the crime reports, it has the disclaimer, and it goes on about sex offenders is not displayed information. I understand this stuff. But then it goes on to say total number of registered sex offenders residing in a geographic area you can get by identifying the first 3 digits of a postal code. So I looked through here quickly, just in the 2 minutes that I had here. Anyone wishing to access the geographic distribution numbers will have to file freedom of information. So can I go to a site and put in 3 postal codes and find out, or do I have to file a freedom of information to be able to do that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding is that you would have to file a freedom of information. I'm not aware of a site that you'd be able to go through, but it would be a freedom of information request that would be filed with our records unit.
So first, it makes it look like it's easy. I'm not blaming you, don't get me wrong. It makes it look like it's easy, and then people will just give up because they won't file a freedom of information to be able to put in their 3 digits of a postal code. So I won't ask you about this. It will be proper, Chair or Chief, when is the proper time for me to ask questions about that? It's not right now, I know.
Why don't we do that under new business?
Okay.
Or other,
be asking
actually,
that in public. Thank
it's
you.
other new business, yeah, okay.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Member Gale. There we are. Now I can see everybody. Any other questions from our members? Seeing none. Stephanie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so I have moved by members Gale and Gibson that this presentation be received. Any further questions? Seeing none, anyone opposed? That's carried. We are now going on to our consent agenda. Item number 7, there's a number of items here, 7.1 through to 7.19. I will move these in block, and then we'll take questions on any individuals. So to get on the floor, I'll have members Lawson and McKendrick move this to get it on the floor that this information will be received. Members, any questions on any of these? I have Member Gibson, Member Eek, Member Lawson.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and through you, I draw your attention to 7.5, crisis negotiation. And on the third page, it speaks to the quite a marked increase for 2020 in the use of the crisis negotiator, 66 occasions. It states probably some of that increase can be attributed to simply being new processes and safer processes, which is understandable. But I also, and this is speculatory, Chief, I look at this and I go, how much is this can be contributed to mental health issues through with COVID? I know that's a hard question, but I wonder, is there definitely must be some of that increase could be attributed to just the elevated stress level of our citizens and more mental health calls.
Chief?
Through you, Chair, I would say the vast majority of these incidents are related to the increase in violent crime that we've unfortunately seen here in Niagara, and we've seen really throughout Southern Ontario. And so, as you had alluded to, it's really a safety measure that we've put in place to ensure that our officers are not being exposed to any unnecessary risks. And when we have our tactical unit execute search warrants at residents, we of course always bring with them our negotiators in the event that they're called upon. Many cases they're not required, and everybody goes home safe and sound. But that really is the lion's share of the increase that relates to those numbers.
Member Gibson?
If I may, Chair, just so that's a nice to know that it's not obviously contributable to stress levels and mental health issues with COVID wearing on people. So that's a good thing to know. Thank you very much.
Through you, Chair, can I just add as well, in recognition of the increased number of calls and the processes that we put in place, we originally had a total of 8 negotiators that were trained. We've increased that to 10 to accommodate those extra calls for service. Again, we feel that's an adequate number given the circumstance. Trying to find that sweet spot in that not having 25 people trained and they never get used. Again, having just the right amount and being able to utilize them when it's appropriate to do so.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, Member Eek? Oh, unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. With respect to item 7.5, I too would like to speak to it briefly. The increase in crisis negotiation is, from me, a positive support in the manner in which policing is being trained and moving in a direction that really supports our citizens' concerns of how critical public issues are dealt with by police. Trained police negotiators are a tool to resolve critical issues in a manner that is opposed to the action of policing use of force. And I believe that this practice supports both policing and citizenry in goals in resolving dangerous situations. So from my perspective, that this is a positive report in a direction that is positive for all members of the force and of our citizens. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Member Eek. Member Lawson?
Thank you. The chief actually already answered my question, which was going to be, is the number of members that we have adequate with the trends? So he's already answered that. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Any further questions on any of the items? Member D'Angelo?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple questions and a comment regarding item 7.8. That's the Marine Unit report. When you look at the numbers on page, I believe page 3, there's a little chart, and it shows that the call volume's gone up substantially. But one of the items that I look at is the provincial offenses notice, and their water related has gone up really, really high. And I know in the report, it talks about the fact that because of COVID, people are probably gravitating to the water a little bit more. But my question is, and I'm not sure what the offenses are, if they're minor or major in nature, but is there an area there to the chief that there might be an opportunity to do some proactive approach to it, so that especially if you have new novice people getting onto the water, if they understand some of the offenses and some of the issues that are being created there, so that we don't end up in an emergency situation where that provincial offense then now turns into a service call where there could be some, injury because of it. Maybe just a few comments on that, if the chief can address that to the chair.
Great, thank you. Chief?
Through you, Chair. Absolutely. We take a proactive approach and have our members of our Marine unit reach out to a number of the boating clubs and marinas. Again, trying to educate rather than enforce, and use that the 4 E's approach that I spoke of earlier applies equally the same in this regard. So again, we utilize social media, all of our different platforms, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and traditional media releases in advance of the boating season to try and educate the public in terms of safety expectations. Our goal is equally aligned with what you had said. We would much prefer having people comply rather than risk the potential for any kind of a safety or worse issue out on the water.
Okay, Member D'Angelo?
Just to follow up, then, no, that's good to hear, especially the fact that we're still in lockdown and it looks like the summer may be very consistent with last summer. So that proactive approach is good. It's like I said, someone would rather have a warning or an issue, realize what they're doing wrong before they actually physically get a ticket. I think it helps everyone, especially everyone's state of mind these days. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Member Eek, did you have a comment on that?
I would like to. I'd like to raise another issue. So I'll wait if there's somebody else would like to comment.
Okay. Anybody else on 7.8? Okay, Member Eek, go ahead.
Yes, if I would like to speak to item 7.10, the proceeds of crime in 2020. And I believe that the citizens need to know or to highlight the outcomes of policing investigations and the proceeds of crime that have been seized. This report outlines some very, very significant numbers associating with what has been seized. And I'll just quickly take a look. In 2020, Canadian currency, 2.7 million, real estate, 8.8 million, vehicles, 311,000, illegal cannabis, 2.5 million Canadian, 18.6 million US dollars. And then there's a specific reference to seizure of $3.5 million in equipment here in St. Catharines. So these are reflect, I guess, the outcomes of the goals and objectives of our police force. And the next question I want to just highlight to the public is the question always comes up, well, what happens to all of those items that have been seized? And the answer, of course, is that they are returned to the Attorney General of Ontario. And what do they do with it? They, of course, offer grants to police forces across Ontario and to provide dollars if they wish to participate to support and extend police policies and programs. So I just wanted to just make a brief comment regarding that because it's significant in what our police force does. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you, Member Eek. Member Gale?
Thank you, Chair. Further on what Dave brought up about the information, Chief, can you please explain to us an example is the bicycles. We keep them here. We put them on the auction. Yet Dave said, and I'm not knocking Dave, that the stuff goes to the Attorney General. What goes to the Attorney General's office and what stays down here? What percentage do we get back of what goes to the Attorney General's? Example, you seize $1 million, you send to the Attorney General's office. How's that fund down here? Is it just by way of grants? And I know the bicycles are all auctioned. I imagine other things are auctioned. Chief, you understand what I mean, if you don't mind explaining?
Chief?
Through you, Chair. So with regards to seized property related to proceeds of crime, so it's offense-related property that we can establish a link to the crime that's being committed, whether it's through funds that have been obtained through, let's say, trafficking drugs as an example. And those funds were used to purchase a residence or purchase cars or whatever. When we can establish that link to the crime that we're investigating, those properties or evidence can be seized, and with the court's direction, those items can then be ordered to be returned to the Attorney General. In the instance of a bicycle, much different scenario. Those are items that are turned over to the police. In some cases, they're recovered stolen property. We're not able to identify who the rightful owner of the property is. And so in those instances, we're able to have them go to auction. The sale of those items then goes into our special fund, which is used to fund a number of initiatives on behalf of the police service through those funds. So again, the funds that are a result of proceeds of crime, there is a grant application process where the police service, our police service and others competitively bid and put grant applications in to retrieve items that can be used to assist police services in further fighting crime. We've been able to, each and every time that grant comes out once a year, we apply for grants, and we've obtained a lot of technical equipment. We've obtained cameras, CCTV cameras that have been utilized in St. Catharines, Niagara Falls. And so again, we exercise every option we can to try and explore grant opportunities such as this one. Hope I answered your question there, Bob.
So thank you for that, Chief. So in the event, and I'll go back to bicycles, it's an easy one to compare. If a bike is turned into us, it was found, obviously it goes to the auction block after a certain period of time. But in the case of, I know in St. Catharines, I believe it was last year, a house was, I'll say raided or whatever, and a number of bicycles were seized because of crimes. Would those bikes go a different route because it was a crime that brought them to us?
Chief?
Through you, Chair. If the bikes are recovered stolen property, obviously our first option is to try and return them to the rightful owner. And then if we can't establish that, then they would go to the auction. Different than, again, the evidence where it's somebody's benefiting off of the proceeds of a crime that they're committing, where we seize a house or we seize a car or something along those lines.
And just as a little side note, I always remember when I ran the convenience stores 15 years ago, some cigarettes that were stolen and they were used in a court case. 2 years later, we got the cigarettes back and they're stale as hell. You can't sell them, but we got them back. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Gale. Member Lawson?
Sorry, it's back to agenda item number 7.6 actually. So
Yep.
equal opportunity discrimination. So the question through you, Chair, to the chief would be for equal opportunity plan for recruiting, how does the percentage of male to female new recruits and sworn officers compare to the prior 2 years? As well, how did the percentages of visible minorities compare to the prior 2 years? And is there any relation into the ranks from the last year to the prior 2 years?
Chief?
Okay, thank you for the question, Member Lawson. Just with regards to our recruiting strategy, we've really taken great strides to try and have our police service representative of our community. And we've held a number of recruiting sessions, specifically trying to address enticing female candidates to enter into the police profession. We've also held different recruiting events to try and get our representation of our communities, such as the South Asian community. We've held recruiting events for them as well. So with regards to, if we look at our 2020 numbers, we hired 59 new officers in 2020. When we look specifically at the male versus female, there were 13 females, so 22% of the 59 that were hired were female. And we look at members of diverse communities. I have to say that the percentage that I'll give you is with a caveat that we don't, this would be based on visual observations of the recruiting unit because it's not something that we specifically ask members whether they identify as being a member of a particular visible minority group. But we, of the 59, 8 of those were from visible minority groups, so 13.5%. Comparatively, in 2019, we hired 40 recruits. 11 were females, so 27.5%. And 7.5% were from diverse communities, that number being 3. 2018, comparatively, we hired 41 officers. 5 of those were from diverse communities, and 9 of those were females. So again, 22% and 12% for the visible minorities. Nationally, the national average for females in policing is approximately 22%. So if we look at that range between 2018 and 2020, we're ranging between 22 and 27.5% for females. So we're quite comparative to the national average. And I'm not sure if I captured all of the points of your question there, Jen. Sorry.
Member Lawson?
You did. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Any further questions on any of these items? Okay, not seeing any. It has been moved and seconded. Anyone opposed? And that's carried that those items be received. Thank you. And thank
Can I
you.
just add one other point, Chair? Sorry.
Nope, certainly, go ahead.
Just with regards to our first hiring in 2021, we've hired 9 recruits. And of those, 5 were male and 4 were female. So again, we're trending very favorably in that regard.
Good, thank you. Okay, under new business, I'll go through these. There's only 2. 8.1, the Corporate Services Committee Councilor Information Request Respect and Report CSD 17, 2021. Moved by members Eek and Gale that the board receives this report and forwards the report to the region's Corporate Services Committee. Any questions with regards to this report? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Item 8.2 is the special fund request, the Canadian Association of Police Governance 2021 Governance Summits, moved by members Gibson and Lawson, that the board authorize a donation at the supporter sponsor level in the total amount of $1,000. That's $500 for each summit from the special fund to the Canadian Association of Police Governance in support of its 2021 governance summits. Any questions on that? Seeing none, anyone opposed? That's carried. Member Gale, other new business, back to you.
So thank you, Chair. So I'm going to go back to this. I have to read it out in case anybody from the public is wondering what I'm talking about. When Stephanie did her presentation on the crime reports, she said to go to niagarapolice.ca or the website, search crime reports, and the disclaimer comes up. And I'm glad Dwayne Sprague is here because Dwayne, I'm going to be asking you a question later too, if you don't mind, through the chair. But when it comes up, it has the disclaimers in bold print, and bold print means serious to me and standing out. It says information on sex offenders is not displayed. The Information Privacy Commissioner has approved the release of some information from the Ontario Sex Offender Registry. Specifically, the total number of registered sex offenders residing in a geographic area, identified by the first 3 digits of a postal code. I thought, great. Anyone wishing to access the geographic distribution numbers will have to file a Freedom of Information request with the OSOR. Not great to me, because a lot of us in politics have seen Freedom of Information requests, how long they take. You have to give the reasons, things like this. So my first question to the chief, through you, Chair, is this following federal or provincial legislation regarding disclosure of info re sex offenders? It's not a police bylaw. You're following the rules of the government. I would take it, Chief, yes?
Chief?
Through you, Chair, I'd have to confirm with Gary Holden. I know that we did extensive work. The crime mapping tool that we utilize here is one that's utilized in the US. And you recall originally what was happening was there are some individuals who may have been convicted of a sex crime in the US and who reside in Canada. And those individuals were showing up on the crime map, and not when it was released publicly, but during the early iterations before we launched it. So again, we had to make certain revisions to ensure that we were adhering to all of the Privacy Commissioner recommendations and guidelines. So again, I believe that what you're seeing on the map and that waiver is in compliance with the Privacy Commissioner.
So thank you, Chief. And I'm not looking for answers today on this because this just came up 2 minutes into Stephanie's spiel here. But I would ask for, by the way of direction of the chair, to have a report back on this with Gary Holden's comments next meeting, if we can, because, and now I'll go off on my tirade, if you want to call it, on this, because I'm not pleased with this at all. Recently, we had the Chippewa area because of a postal code. And I don't know the exact wording on this. The pandemic was more prevalent in that area. So they named the postal code and they said it's in that area. And that was good. More people were getting vaccinated there. We need to know this. In this case here, I'd like to know where the line is. And I'm not saying to you, Chief, from the government. And Dwayne, if you want to cut in on this when I'm done, because the Solicitor General obviously makes the rules or tells us the rules. And I agree there should be no name or address. I get that. But if one of our citizens should have the ability to take a look at their postal code and see if there's 0 or 20 of these people in the area. And they'll be held to pay, rightfully so, if something happened in an area and say a senior citizen, I'm senior now, I can say this, went and said, oh, good, I can put in the postal code. I can find out how many people are in my area. Freedom of information. I'm not going to be doing that. That's the conversation that will happen every time. Nobody's going to file a freedom of information request on this. Yet, take Niagara Falls, where I am elected out of, and if they found out there was 5 in that area, in a certain area, maybe that's not a lot. Maybe 1 is a lot, whatever. Take Kevin, Mayor Gibson, in his area. If he found out that there was 2 or 3 in his area, I'd be more wondering what's going on here. And not that it's against the rules, just you want to protect your families more. And especially if a person went to the website and said, geez, I saw some people that looked suspicious walking down the street. I'm not identifying male or female or anything. But they went to the site and said, hey, I'd like to see if there's anybody living in our area that falls under this classification. Oh, freedom of information, we're not going to do that. So I'd like to challenge the government, but I'd like to have a report back before I really speak any further on this, because this, I'm sorry that when I saw this, my mind went to this during Stephanie's report, because I was looking at stolen cars on that crime report thing, and I didn't pay the attention to that, and I'll look at that later. But this, when I pulled this up, this really concerned me that people have to jump through hoops like this. And Chair, through you, I'd like a comment from Dwayne, if he doesn't matter. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Dwayne, but if you have any comments on this, please.
Yes, no problem. Bob, through the board chair. I will look into it. I think I have a partial answer, but I would prefer to get the complete information for you. I think and just to clarify, the information that you're requiring or requesting is you want to make sure that not the details, but basically not high level information is available regarding a sex offender that can be on that what's called the website that you folks have up there, the crime report mapping tool. So you want to basically know if that information. Okay, yeah, I get exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it should be easier this day and age, and I think our citizens should have the right to put it in and find out how many are in that area. No more, no less. I understand that they have to go to this to do it, but no freedom of information request. That's my thoughts. And Chair, I don't need an answer right now. Next meeting would be great if that's fine.
Okay. Board Chair, one last thing. Do you want me to, whatever I find out, do you want me to pass along to Deb?
Yes, do that, and then Deb can give it to the chief's staff, and they can put that in their report. So I think good direction from the board to the chief and his staff to bring this back at their earliest convenience. Deb, do you want a motion on this, or is that all right for taking direction today?
I'd like to make it a motion if you don't mind, Chair, because
Okay,
I think this is serious enough. And Deb, if you don't mind making through you, Chair, if you don't mind making the wording that the board requests more information on this. Deb, you come up with the words for me, please.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, thank you, Member Gibson. I think what for Bob is a report, if you allow me, a report that comes back to the board through the chief's office at their earliest convenience. Just, I don't want to put the next meeting just in case something else.
Sure.
Brewing.
Sure. And
that it gives us the details of our online mapping with regards to sex offenders and the rules surrounding the caveats on our website with regards to Freedom of Information Act, and if there is anything we can do with regards to showing numbers by postal code, or is this mandated for us to do? Is that all right? So I think
that's correct, Chair. And I know this is a drawn out procedure, because if we find out the provincial government or the federal government's involved in the reasons for this, then this isn't a quick fix, but it's got to start here on something like that, I feel, unless somebody can prove me wrong. And I'd like to apologize to the chief, because Chief, I know you brought this report, and I was going to ask questions on cars, stolen cars and things like this. And that's one of the reasons is I'll take a look at this again and save my questions for next meeting or a meeting in the future, if you don't mind.
Okay, perfect. So I have members Gale and members Gibson moving this. Chief, with regards to this going to your office and through your staff, comments?
Through you, Chair, we have no issue with bringing forward a report that provides some further clarity. I would just want to reassure the public, I guess, and reassure the board. Anytime a sex offender is convicted in Canada, they're automatically added to the sex offender registry, which is available to police. It unfortunately is not available to the public. But when they become a member of the sex offender registry, it compels them to update detectives that are assigned to our offender management unit as to where they reside. It's not published due to privacy laws, but what we have seen in other jurisdictions where they do what's often referred to as the naming and shaming, and they allow those sex offender addresses and names to be published publicly, it causes those individuals to go underground to essentially evade public reprisal. So here we see a very high compliancy rate. About 98% of our sex offenders are residing where they're supposed to be residing. So again, just want to reassure the public in that regard. But with regards to Member Gale's request for a report, we're prepared to bring a report forward as soon as possible.
Great, thank you, Chief.
Chair, if I may speak one more.
Yep, go ahead.
And I thank the chief for saying that. In no way, shape, or form am I saying that we have problems out there that I know of or anything. Just by the quick look at this, I want to make sure there's not problems in the future. And I think the public has the right to know. It's where the bar is set. Like, I think the public should have the right to not have to go freedom of information on this and just be able to put it in on their computers and see and be more informed. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any further questions with regards to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, anyone opposed? That's carried. Great, thank you. There are no in-camera reports today, so I'll move to adjourn this meeting.
Oh, Chair, can I just, under other business?
Oh, I apologize. I should have said any other new business. Listen.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and through you. I just want to make a comment here to the public. How absolutely fortunate Niagara Region is to have the police leadership that we do here. On Fridays, we all know the provincial government came out with more extensive controls to deal with COVID. One of those controls was the random stop of any vehicle out in the road, and which when the Solgen announced that, my jaw dropped. I was really shocked by that because that is so counter charter. I was really surprised. And to our chief's credit and the executive leadership, they came out the next morning before the provincial government reversed that decision and said they would not be following that decision. I think that they could see how counter charter it was and the problems that they had that it would create. So, and if you think about that, that's going against your boss's direction. So, you know, in a manner of speaking, the Solgen is the boss for the province of all policing. And so our chief and our senior leadership had the bravery to stand up and say that that was not within the charter. And so I was really proud when I saw the chief's press release on that. I was very proud of that. And shortly afterwards, the other police services also came out and said they would not be doing that. And I think perhaps our chief was the first one to put that out. And shortly after that, the provincial government backed off on that. So Niagara residents, you can be very proud of your leadership here, so in your policing. So that's all, just a comment.
Thank you, Member Gibson. Any further new business? Member D'Angelo.
Well, I just want to continue along that line. I've received a lot of positive comments with that initiative of not wanting to stop people just traveling through our community. There's a heightened awareness already with COVID and the restrictions. To add that to them wouldn't be a beneficial thing. So again, I want to commend the chief along with Member Gibson, the fact that they did an excellent job of they brought common sense to an issue that a lot of people see as very positive. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Member D'Angelo. Anything further, members?
Thank you for that feedback through you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to clarify, we weren't the first service, but we certainly took the lead of some others, and appreciate those kind words. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Chief. Okay. So sorry, there are no in-camera reports. So I'll move to adjourn this portion of the meeting. Take a 5-minute break and then come back to our next.